Rivers don't flow through mountains. They flow around them. China is about to send one straight through by drilling four 20-kilometer tunnels beneath the Himalayas. It is called the Maydog Project. It sits on the Yarlung Tsangpo River in the far east of Tibet, and it will cost about $167 billion. That is more than the International Space Station, the most expensive object human beings have ever built. But the engineering is not the reason this project matters. The reason is the address. That river does not stay in Tibet. It crosses into India, changes its name twice, and reaches the sea in Bangladesh. Around 130 million people live along it. So, this is not really a story about a dam. It is a story about who stands at the top of a river, and how much that position is actually worth. To understand why China chose this exact spot, you have to look at what the river does here. The Yarlung Tsangpo runs east across the Tibetan Plateau, wide and slow, at nearly 4,000 meters above sea level. Then it reaches a mountain called Namcha Barwa. Until 1992, it was the highest mountain on Earth that nobody had ever climbed. The river does not go over it. It turns. It wraps almost all the way around the peak, and inside that curve it falls 2,000 meters in about 50 kilometers. That is the Great Bend. The canyon it has carved there is the deepest on Earth, 3 times deeper than the Grand Canyon. Hydropower is a simple equation. How much water multiplied by how far it falls. Almost nowhere else on the planet does a river this large drop this far, this fast. The design follows that geography exactly. Instead of one enormous wall, the tunnels through Namcha Barwa feed a cascade of 5 power stations built inside the rock. And look at what that shortcut is really doing. The water skips the entire bend. Water enters the mountain at the top of the bend and falls through turbines inside the rock. Then it rejoins the river below. Remember that design. It is the whole of China's argument about this project. And consider the terrain they are doing it in. Until 2013, Maydog was the last county in China with no road at all, reachable on foot over Himalayan passes. That is where they are building the largest power station in the world. So what actually comes out of it? About 300 billion kilowatt hours of electricity a year. Here's a frame you can hold on to. In 2024, the entire United Kingdom, every home, every factory, every train, generated less electricity than that. Tibet cannot absorb it. The region uses somewhere around 13 billion kilowatt hours a year. Maydog alone would produce more than 20 times that. So, the electricity goes east. China has built the longest high-voltage transmission network on Earth, moving power from the west, where the rivers and the sun are, to the coast, where the factories and the data centers are. Some of what Maydog generates will end up running the servers that answer the searches you type. Water falling off the roof of the world, arriving as a search result. That is the first flow. Electricity. Heading east. Entirely inside one country. The second flow is the one that leaves. On the 15th of August, 1950, the ground underneath Maydog tore open. The earthquake measured magnitude 8.6. It is still the largest continental earthquake ever recorded by instruments. It pushed entire hillsides into the canyon, blocked rivers, and then burst them. The epicenter was here. The largest construction project on the planet is going into one of the most seismically violent places on it, where the Indian plate is driving into Asia and bending the crust around this mountain. The slopes are the second problem. In October 2018, a landslide fell into the Yarlung Tsangpo and dammed it. A lake built up behind the debris. More than 6,000 people were evacuated upstream. And downstream in India, the Siang River dropped to an unprecedented low until the barrier gave way. That happened without anyone building anything. And then, there is what the river carries. The Brahmaputra moves around 700 million tons of sediment a year, one of the heaviest loads of any river on Earth. That silt is not waste. It is the raw material of Bangladesh. The delta that most of the country sits on is made of it, and it has to be resupplied because deltas sink. Dams trap sediment. Researchers modeling the Ganges-Brahmaputra Delta have found that if every dam and diversion now planned across the basin were built, the sediment reaching the coast could fall by anywhere between 15 and 80%. So, who controls this water? Physically, the answer is simple. China is upstream, and the Medog site sits less than 50 kilometers from the boundary with the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh, a state administered by India and claimed by China, which calls it Zangnan. Below that line, the river is called the Siang. On the plains of Assam, it becomes the Brahmaputra. In Bangladesh, it becomes the Jamuna, meets the Ganges, and empties into the Bay of Bengal. One river, 3 names, 3 jurisdictions, and no treaty governing any of it. India and China have never had a water-sharing agreement. What they had was much narrower, a memorandum under which China supplied river data during the flood season. It expired in June 2023 and has not been renewed. The two governments discussed restarting it at expert-level talks in 2025. Now here's the figure that decides how much that upstream position is really worth. Only about 1/3 of the Brahmaputra's water comes down from Tibet. The other 2/3 fall as monsoon rain after the river is already inside India. So the honest version of the leverage is this. The tap at the top of the river is real, but it is a small tap. Most of this river is made downstream by the monsoon below anything China can build. So which is it? A power station or a valve? Both sides of this argument have data. China's position rests on the design. The foreign ministry has said the project is run of the river. Water is diverted through the tunnels, turns the turbines, and returns to the same channel. It is built to generate electricity, not to store water or move it somewhere else. And Beijing says it will not have a negative impact downstream. The engineering supports part of that. A run-of-the-river station has no giant reservoir holding back a season's flow, and 2/3 of the water below never passes the site at all. The counter-argument is not really about the yearly average. It is about the days. Pema Khandu, Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh, has called the project a ticking water bomb. His words. His argument is that a structure able to hold water even briefly is also able to release it, and that filling a cascade of this size could cut flow for a period, or send a surge down a valley with no warning arrangement in place. There is a precedent for the warning question, and it cuts the other way. In 2018, when that landslide dammed the river, China did alert India and passed on hourly water level readings while the danger lasted. The data agreement that framed that exchange is the one that has since lapsed. India's response has been physical. The state-run company NHPC is pushing the Siang Upper Multipurpose Project, 11,000 megawatts, and if it is built, the largest hydropower station in India. Its stated purpose is partly electricity and partly buffer, a reservoir that could absorb a surge from upstream or release water during a shortfall. It is contested at home. Adi communities in the Siang Valley have blocked survey teams, arguing that the reservoir would flood villages and farmland in order to defend against a risk they did not create. A dam because of a dam. And below both of them is Bangladesh, the last country on the river, which has been seeking information on what is being built upstream, and which sits at neither table. Whatever that argument settles, some of this is already fixed by physics. On the current schedule, the Medog stations come online around 2033. When they do, they will generate more electricity than any structure ever built, by a wide margin. The Three Gorges Dam is famous for a number that has nothing to do with power. When its reservoir filled, NASA calculated that the mass of the water, 40 cubic kilometers of it, lifted 175 meters and held there, was enough to change, very slightly, how fast the planet turns. Medog will hold nothing like that. it was never designed to. And that is the thing most easily missed about this project. Its significance does not come from how much water it stores. It comes from where it stands. 130 million people do not need the river to be held back to be affected by it. What they need is to know what it is going to do next week, how much is coming, and when. If you lived on that river, that is the number you would want. And in the dry months, right now, nobody downstream receives it by agreement. In 2033, if the schedule holds, the Yarlung Changpo will stop flowing around Namcha Barwa and start flowing through it. If it works as designed, the river comes out the other side, and the amount reaching India over a year barely moves. What changes is that the timing of it, day to day, now runs through a control room.